All right, we're live. Everyman BJJ podcast, Sunday afternoon. I've got University of Houston beating. Oh, I just forgot the team. Oh no. Uh, I just forgot the team they're playing against. Rutgers.
You do
Ah,
all this research, and then we go live, and then you forget
ah,
who Houston's playing today in the NCAA tournament.
Rutgers. Yeah. Oh, you know,
Okay?
ah, I, I don't know why. Sometimes I'm missing the word. I can't remember the word. It's just like, what's that word? I'm trying to remember. Do you have Everyone has this problem. You can't remember the word. It's like mental
It's
block.
called early onset dementia. No,
Stop
it's
that. No.
from eating too much meat.
Stop that. No. No.
It's from the carnivore diet. Too much carnivore diet.
Stop. You know what it is lack of sleep for this guy. I've been busy with work, and
It's a little bit of a miracle that you're able to make these podcasts given the long hours you work right now. And I'm saying that like in seriousness, in all earnestness.
thanks, man.
It is a miracle that you're able to show up. And no, you and I were talking off camera before we got here. I was apologizing. You were giving me some flack for my attire, my wardrobe today. But anybody who knows me, anybody who follows me on social media knows that I'm big into the shirtless shenanigans, the sun soaking. So we got multitasking going today. We're doing the podcast, getting the sun. My skin likes the sun. I believe in the power of the sun. I believe in it for the hormones, for the testosterone, for the immune system, for the mood, for the serotonin. I'm all about that sun. Don't try this at home. My skin likes the sun. I got that thick Mediterranean skin. You were telling me about moles on your head and serious stuff. Not a joke. Not a joke.
Yeah, you gotta screen for skin cancer, and I need to go in and have a screening. That's a normal thing to do. You check stuff out, and I know I need to. I see a spot and I want to check it out. That's all. So
now we were for those who are watching right now, we were supposed to have Rudy Rudiger. A lot of people don't know who Rudy Rudiger is, but if you're from our generation, right, back in the early 1990s, Hoosier was out. We were all watching Karate Kid. We were watching Hoosiers. We were watching Bruce Lee movies, Enter the Dragon, and Rudy was one of those movies, right? Rudy was one of those movies about the guy who's a walk-on at Notre Dame and dreams of being in the game. Anyway, Rudy Rudiger, who lives here in Vegas, we were going to have Rudy on today, but by coincidence, very serendipitously, Rudy is traveling, and he was going to try to make it today. Obviously, he wasn't able to, but he was traveling from your old neck of the woods. Don't mess with Texas. He was traveling from Houston to Vegas today, so maybe something came up. But we are going to have Rudy Rudiger on again. That's going to be a great one, Noah. You did a lot of research. You always like to do your research, so we'll have some questions for Rudy if it's next week, the following week. You and I have talked about this just to show people the world will one day catch up to what we're doing here right now. The world hasn't caught up. We have very modest viewership totals. The world will catch up, but we've talked about how, yes, we want to have fighters, we want to have jiu-jitsu legends and coaches and this and that, but we also want to have some inspirational figures. We're not afraid to get a big name who's outside of the fight biz, although you told me based on your research that Rudy had a boxing background. So what do you know? It ties in, it dovetails nicely. So
absolutely, Rudy. Rudy was on in the boxing ring, and he beat up some Notre Dame football players in the ring. Amazingly. But we'll cover that story with him. Let's. I want to hold back some of that magic.
Yep.
And
let's talk a little bit. NCAA wrestling tournament wrapped up yesterday, and I got a chance to watch it. I was here at Whole Foods. I was doing some work on the computer, and I looked up, and that tournament was on. And one of the big things that happened there was there's a guy, Shane Griffith. I don't know if you've heard of Shane Griffith, but Shane Griffith Stanford wrestling program. They announced last year with COVID that Stanford University announced, hey, we're getting rid of the wrestling program. They've had some pretty good wrestlers there over the years. They haven't had a bunch of national champions. They haven't been like a top 5 or top 10 usually, but they've produced some good wrestlers anyway. This guy was a number 8 seed. And so maybe he's positioned, he'd be lucky to be an All-American, number 8 seed, wins the whole thing. And he wears a black singlet in the finals. Doesn't even have the name, doesn't even have the Stanford logo or anything. And he wins the whole. I mean, what I derived from that, I was like, wow. And that was his way. Like, that was his statement. He said to ESPN afterwards, he's like, I did my part. I've done all I can do to save this program. Stanford University raised $12 million. So in the time since the announcement of, hey, we're scrapping wrestling, they got together alumni, ex-wrestlers, whatever, people from around the country. $12 million they've raised already. You would think that'd be enough. That has so far had not been enough to save it. Then Shane Griffith wins the whole thing yesterday. Like, man, and the thing that stood out to me about it was like a man of destiny. It just goes to show you, like, kind of like what you talk about, the everyman, right? The greatness that lurks in the everyman or the everywoman. And so this guy, number 8 seed, just a man on a mission, a man with a purpose. Like, he's armed with something extra, something spiritual, something invisible. Like, he just came out there like a man on fire and tapped into something else, got a new gear, right? Something bigger than himself. And that was, to me, what Shane Griffith embodied. And just like, wow, that story is going to be, you talk about like Rudy, that story of what Shane Griffith did is going to go down as legendary. And I have a feeling, I don't know why I have a gut feeling, unless the egos are involved. Sometimes college administrators, at this point, it might be saving face or egos. Absent the egos, I think if Stanford University really puts it under a microscope, because the proposal to save wrestling was also to say, let's add a women's program. University of Iowa, that just won the national title in wrestling yesterday, right? First time in a long time, because Penn State's had a monopoly on that thing. But, Iowa announced, we're going to have women's wrestling. We're rolling out women's wrestling. Women's wrestling is skyrocketing, as Julia Salata came on our program and told us about. Women's wrestling is skyrocketing. Stanford said, hey, let's not only save our program, let's add women. Here's $12 million to go with it. Here's Shane Griffith making, Shane Griffith took this story off the sports page, because this story normally would only run on the sports page, on the wrestling blogs, that sort of thing. Shane Griffith has it in the mainstream media. It's now a news story. And so if you're Stanford University and you're thinking, like, I'm just conjecturing, if you're thinking of a reason to cut it, what's the reason? $12 million probably covers that program for the next easily 7-8 years, travel and everything. So you can't say it's an expense. They're paying for themselves now. They're giving you $12 million. That'll probably last 10 years or so, and more money is probably coming in. Shane Griffith takes it. There's people in the wrestling community all over that are writing Stanford University, the NCAA, saying keep this program. The thing that's interesting, Noah, is while wrestling is not a revenue sport, to me, to people like you and me, it's among the greatest sports ever. We can't always go, even as college, athletic directors and administrators, you can't just go and put and assign price tags to everything and say, and try to value something, because as we know from the jiu-jitsu world, some things are priceless. Some things are hard to value. You can't always go and put a dollar sign on everything. And if you look at wrestling, what it symbolizes, the intangibles that it builds, one of the greatest of sports, some of the hardest working athletes, they sacrifice so much with weight loss. It's so hard. And to just knee-jerk, boom, gone, vanished. Even when they have good teams, even when they're good programs, well-run programs, they're not in trouble. They're not violating NCAA rules. They're not in hot water. They're not getting negative headlines. Boom. One of the first to go traditionally has been wrestling. When AD directors look to cut something, the one among the most vulnerable has always been wrestling. And thank goodness now, what Shane Griffith did, and also what the ladies are doing, what the women are doing, putting wrestling on their back. It's ironic. Hallelujah. The ladies, the women coming up may be what saved wrestling programs, might be what saved Stanford University, in addition to what Shane Griffith did yesterday. It was amazing to watch.
The money is such a driver these days with these programs. I had gone through a book last year about Rick Pitino, and just the I think that was like in September, October. The money is just such a driver for decision making. These Olympic sports have a hard time competing to fill the seats with these other more mainstream sports: basketball, football, baseball, and to a lesser extent, any of the track and field. We're going to see this as a challenge where you have that top tier of the top tier, the huge spectator sports, and the gambling associated with it. Any sport that it's hard to gamble on, I think, is part of this.
What's interesting is what we've seen this past weekend, and I think we've seen more of it in recent years. We're seeing, I call it underdog heaven. You can call it whatever you want, but we're seeing the underdogs have always risen up over the years. It seems like underdogs having their day, like pulling the upset, is becoming a more frequent thing. And there's different theories for that, but it seemed like that. If you look even at NCAA wrestling tournament, even the kid from Oklahoma State, A.J. Ferrari, if you're not familiar with that name, get familiar. He's a true freshman, wins the national title, number 4 seed. Right, he's a number 4 seed. He was in the finals against the number 6 seed. And then you've got Griffith is the number 8 seed. You had a lot of non-number 1 seeds. There were a lot of upsets in NCAA wrestling. And you've been following NCAA men's basketball. Number 1 seed Illinois just fell to what's it called? Like
Loyola
Chicago, right? And then number 2 Ohio State fell to the number 15 seed. You're just going to see more of that. It's like the motivation, the I believe we can every day. It's just, it's spreading. It's the click of a button away. So there's a lot of inspirational, motivational stuff. The underdogs more than ever believe that it can be their day. And I was thinking yesterday, it had me thinking about like, the power of being an underdog, because you have so much fight in you. And a lot of times when you're the favorite, you tend to fight scared. You tend to fight not to lose. Instead of when you're the underdog, you fight as if you have nothing to lose. You're single-minded, and that can be a wonderful fuel. Sometimes it's a lot harder to be the front runner, because sometimes it doesn't feel like you're as connected to your why. You lose your way on your why. You tend to just, well, what if we lose? Or you tend to not have that extra gear of digging as deep or fighting as deep or clawing as deep. You can see that happen. And you have to always remember, if you are the number 1 seed, whether it be football, wrestling, whatever it is, to still have that hunger, that desire to go through the fire to get it. Because sometimes I think a lot of these number 1 seeds don't expect the fight and the clawing and the grinding that they get. They think it's going to be easy, and then it's not. And if you're not psychologically ready to crawl for it, to grind for it, to bleed for it, then you can go out there and have a bad day. So it kind of reminds me, it's like when you're a black belt on the mats, Noah, and you roll with a white belt or a blue belt, a lot of times you're their Super Bowl. You're their Super Bowl. You're going to get a lot of times you're going to get the best they have to bring, because there's nothing better that some of the white belts that were formerly wrestlers, or they're good athletes but they're white belts, or they're just super competitive, or the blue belts who were wrestlers or they're super competitive. They would like nothing more than a feather in their cap than to say to themselves, go home and tell their wife or their girlfriend or whoever, hey, I
tapped the blue
black
belt.
belt. I beat a black belt today. That's their
Yeah.
Super Bowl. That's their Super Bowl. So you got to be ready for that. You know that you're gonna get it. And so anyway, it just seems like if you're a high performer out there and you're number one, just realize how competitive the world is. It's not easy. Heavy lies the crown. It's like we say with whether you're UFC or wherever you are, it's easier to win the title than to defend the title. Jan Blachowicz, when he beat Israel Adesanya in the recent fight, afterwards he said, "Now I feel like the champion." He did not. When he beat even Dominic, he beat Dominic. I'm so sorry, Reyes. He beat Dominic Reyes, and that was a big win. And Dominic Reyes is no joke. Dominic Reyes pushed John Jones to the brink, to the point where John Jones apparently didn't have any interest in that rematch. And Jan Blachowicz still said, "I didn't feel like the champion until today, till I beat Israel Adesanya."
It's your, I always go back to that, the lyrics of the Cedars of Lebanon by U2. It's your enemies that make you. It's the enemies that make you. I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it written in front of me, but it's your enemies that really make who you are. You may not have enemies, but you may have, if you're the protagonist, who is your antagonist? It might be your child, because, there's another expression which is that the sand, in the oyster that makes the pearl. Well, that friction, or that difficulty that you have in your life, is the measure of that is the measure of you by proxy. There's a derivative of that, and sometimes it's yourself. At the end of the day, it is yourself. You yourself. It's fighting with yourself. Frank, I want to pivot a little bit and ask you about your process for as you're setting goals. Okay. And I'm right now setting some. I'm in the due diligence phase of setting a goal, and that's and my approach to it is, I gather a lot of information and I synthesize it. So I'm bringing a lot of information in, and I'm going through it and just covering it. And as I'm starting to map out my plan, my strategy of how I do it, and then from that strategy, the tactics of like, what are my particulars? And then I'll get to scheduling it, where I work out my schedule. That's kind of a method, my method for doing it. It's a brute force approach. It takes a lot of work to do it, a lot of time. What's your take on not the goal setting, but the planning aspect of it, and how and the the early stages of preparation? Like, okay, this is how I'm going to approach this. What do you do?
Well, I'm not a master planner. I'd say historically, I'd say that's something that came. I'm a very very passion-driven person, a very spontaneous, in the moment, improvisational person. And so the planning part has been, in my life, been more of a challenge. Now, by interestingly enough, where I've had the most success professionally in my life and athletically were when I just followed my heart and I just decided to show up every day, whether it be jiu-jitsu practice, wrestling practice, as a journalist working for the UFC. As long as I just showed up every day and I was passionate, and then I just used my natural gifts and then my experience, then a lot of really good things just started to happen. Now, The problem for a lot of us is when we pivot, especially when we have life pivots, right? And we pivot, then now we're not.
And he pivots to the black, apparently. So let me see if I am going to venture a guess that Frank, sitting out in the sun, has fried his device, and he's going to be offline. So I'm going to give him a few minutes, see if he can bounce back in. But yeah, he loves his son, and the son loves him right back and gets his tech too hot. I love it how he just faded out right then. That is so much like Frank. I love it. So I'm going to give him a few minutes to restart his device. This is something that my man is not. He's not the tech savvy guy. I let Frank do much of the talking because he is such a talker. Me, I'm actually more reserved, and I want to hang back and let things develop, and then jump in. But yeah, I like it. I like the dynamic. He is much more spontaneous and more. What's the word I'm looking for? So it's not spontaneous. It's something else that's more on point. He just jumps into things sometimes. So that passion approach that he takes is, it has its strengths. You need that final push. To get you there. Whereas, the drudgery, the in and out, regular, he has that good skill about him, which is, he does show up. I've worked with him in the past in a business, and more than anything else, he shows up early and he's there ready to go. He's very consistent in that regard. So he's a consistent player and just coming to work, showing up, not being late. That's something I do like about Frank as well, is he is very punctual. So he has that passionate edge about him, but he's also punctual, consistent. So he's actually, I think that as he's saying here, that where he's saying that he's more passionate, but he's got more of this aspect of being careful, strategic, and thoughtful in his approach to every day than when he leads on. So I see he's coming back on board here. Hi.
Hey, Noah.
So
when did the video cease or stop?
How far did you go? You don't know how long you were on with the device. I assume that your device got too hot.
No, it's not. It's actually, it's not hot. It's not.
No, hot. I made the assumption.
Nope.
So
I've been covering it. I've been covering it actually.
Oh, okay. So I'm wrong. I assumed that you are. Well, let's just rewind this to where you are. I asked you a question, and the question is, what's your approach? For the we're talking about the detailed planning when you're in the stage of, like, you've already committed yourself to a goal, and with that commitment comes, you need to get down to the brass tacks of how it's going to be done. So that's the detailed planning phase of your project, of your goal. And you started talking about where you are with that and your approach. You said that you're passionate and you have a lot of gusto. That. So that aspect we know. But how do you make that sustainable throughout the long course, you know, of a I call it a project. It's, you know, you make sure you make your trainings. It's an everyday grind. It's an everyday grind. You got to go, but you need to know which direction you need to navigate to that point. So how do you do your planning? How do you do your planning for these kinds of little projects that you have?
Well, it's you know, everybody's different. I think mine will be different. I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of writing things down. You know, if you can't write it down, then you're probably not aware of it, right? So, you know, the problem with you know, you can have it in your head, but when you look at it on a piece of paper, then it's there and you can look at it every day and you can reinforce it, and then you can also become more aware of your blind spots, right? So um, a lot of you know, a lot of people when they go to write things down, if you look at it or you have a friend that you're a mentor or somebody like that, an advisor, look at it and you can see the gaps. So I like, you know, I like to write things down, and I'm talking pages and pages, just like a white paper, just like a business plan. I'm talking pages upon pages, like bring a book, or you're going to do a magazine story, or you're going to start a brand. You should be able. You should have, even though we all, you know, research is an ongoing thing, right? I mean, it's you know, improving your brand is an ongoing thing. But at the moment that you're getting ready to open the doors, you're getting ready to start writing the book, or you're going to write the magazine story, or you're starting the business, you should be able to sit down in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and write out like 7 or 8 pages. If you can't write 7 or 8 pages off the top of your hand, you're not anywhere close to being ready. You should be able to know. I'm not saying perfect. I'm not talking about perfect. I'm just saying, if I was in a crunch and in 90 minutes or two, you know, if I had a book that was going to hit, and I was like, I got to write this book. If I can't talk about that for 20 minutes to somebody in really good detail, or I can't write it down for 7 or 8 pages, you're not ready. You're nowhere near. You're never ready, right? You got to just dive in at some point, but you're nowhere near ready. You're way behind. You should be able to sit there and for 20 minutes, it's like if I just told you to talk about something for 20 minutes that you're passionate about, that, you know, if I put you in front of a group of 300 people tomorrow giving a speech, you should be able to, there should be multiple topics you can get up there cold turkey and talk for 20 minutes and talk intelligently, and where people would learn something. If you can't do that, you definitely shouldn't be doing a book on it. You definitely shouldn't be building a business around it. You should be ready right now, cold turkey, like, give me 20 good minutes on topic X.
So let me jump in there.
On this brand. And if you can't, then you got to sit down with pen and paper, and you're not done just because you can give me 20 good minutes on it. Just because you can give me 7 to 8 pages on it in 1 hour does not mean you're anywhere near ready. It does not mean your brand. It just means that's a starting point. You should know enough about about the industry, about your topic, about what you're bringing to the table, where it should be instant recall. If it's not instant recall, and it's on some document somewhere, but it's not internalized, do something else. Do whatever is internalized right now, right? There needs to be some internalization. So I'm a big fan of, like, deep down, like, something that you've lived that's a part of you that you could talk about for 20 minutes. The other thing I say, Noah, is if you're going to plan something, you're going to do these step-by-steps and all of the little steps in there, just like ingredients to a recipe, right?
Or like you're preparing for a tournament.
Yeah. Is it 2 tablespoons of salt? Is it 1 tablespoon? You know, you got to know that, right? You got to know ahead of time what it is, like, as precise as you can, what's the exact recipe. But the other thing I would think is, what is your differentiation? I think if we're talking about, like, business, what distinguishes you? You should know what distinguishes you from most of the pack. And in my opinion, you know, this is a philosophy, you should play to your strengths. You should know if you're an X-guard player or you're a hero, you know, you can always build around that, but you should know what your bread and butter is. You should know what your strengths are. You should know what differentiates you from the pack. And when you go to plan, you should plan to emphasize that differentiation, that those points of distinction. And I think a lot of people early in the planning, I would say, what's going to distinguish you from usually these are crowded spaces. What's going to distinguish you, whatever that is. You're a Harvard grad, you're a world champion, you won the best blank whatever award, best of Las Vegas, whatever it was. You got to start thinking like what about those points of distinction. So one is knowing that as precise of a recipe as you can. One is making sure. The other thing is make sure you're in the right space, because a lot of people, I hate to say it, but I this is my personal opinion. I think most people are doing what's popular, not what's passionate. They're doing what's popular and where they think the money is, and they're doing things because of the popularity or because it's hot or because it's whatever. Dana White and Lorenzo and Frankie Fertitta didn't start UFC because it was popular. It wasn't. By and large, it wasn't. They didn't start it because it was popular. They started it because they were passionate. They're like, we're on to something, and this could be big. And so I'm a big believer in that. Like, don't wait for it to be popular. Just passion precedes, popularity and profitability. So I would just say the most important thing in the planning, yeah, you want to know the ingredients. Yes, you should be able to give me 20 good minutes, but you should also know thyself. Why are you the right person to do this? Why is it fit? Why does it work? Why are you a special person? Why are you even doing this? Just know your why. Like, why is this? Because the thing is, if your why is weak, right? And most people's whys are weak. If your why is weak, you're going to fail, because it's too hard to make any brand or be a world champion. Things are too hard if your why is weak. So you got to take a really good, strong look and say, why is this important? Would I do this even if I don't make money? You and I are doing this podcast. We're not making any money. We have, we're producing some really good content, but our why is strong. We believe in it. We know we've got great content, right? We know we've got some great guests. We can see, we have a vision of where we're going with this, right? We've seen other podcasts succeed. It's what I do. It's what you do. So, and it's what we do when we're alone anyway. We do that when we're together anyway. So we're just happen to be filming it. We already do this anyway. We do this for hours anyway, so we might as well film it. So, but people need to ask themselves, know thyself. What's the why behind it? And so I would say that precedes any planning. Make sure you're doing the right thing. I'm a big believer. Noah, you know this. You worked on Wall Street. You've done a lot of great stuff. Plans can be overrated sometimes. I'm telling you, understand that some Jedis, plans can be overrated in that you could do a business plan. We could do a 5-year business plan. This happens all the time. We do the plan, we raise, venture capitalists fund it, and then it gets funded. And then everybody in the building, including the venture capitalists who funded it, know that that plan is not going to, a lot of stuff in that plan is just not going to work. We know that. But the fact that we went through and we put the brain power through to research the industry and do a white paper on it and whatever, and that we're that determined, that the secret sauce is the determination. The secret sauce is the relentlessness. The secret sauce is the why. The secret sauce is the keep going. The secret sauce is the networking. Plans get blown up all the time. Just do.
Yeah. Can I refine what you're saying? Is let's assume that's already where I want to place our conversation right now is past all that. Okay. Get me past, I want to get you past all the, the why, setting the initial part of it. And there's another piece of this I needed to thread in here, to weave in. Part of this is the kind of goal that you take on. It's something that is a high likelihood of failure. Okay. So like I could very, very, very likely fail at my goal. Okay. And that's because it's a stretch goal. Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Well, while he's resetting his device, what I'm talking about is there there are goals. Oh, well, let me say it with him on. Frank,
Yeah.
there are goals that you can set for yourself which are hard to achieve. Okay. I like, like for me, I might set a goal of I want to get a first place finish in the Masters tournament in August of this year in my belt and age bracket. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
could fail at that goal. Most likely I would fail. Um, what's your, and that's such, or like I want to apply to Harvard Law, or I want to apply to law school. I got my cat here. He just woke up from his nap.
Well,
You
what you're
know,
saying, though, you already know this, but it's not. It's again, is it the journey or the destination? Every
mhm.
smart person says it's the journey, but when we say it's the journey, what we're saying is it's what you become along the way. Right? That's all we're
Yeah,
saying. It's what in the pursuit of a big goal, you tend to become something bigger and better along the way, right? It just tends. So it's just I have to remind myself of that. There have been times, this. There have been times in my life where I didn't have any money and I was sleeping on my brother's couch, and things were very hard financially. And I'm like, what's going on? And like everything else in my life is good, but just financially, um, and and then I just have to remember, like, okay, like sometimes you just feel like a failure, right? Especially in America, if you weren't doing well financially, you just feel like
oh
a total failure. And in our country,
man,
right, you just feel
this
like a big zero when money's tight and you're not doing well and credit takes a hit. I mean, you feel like a colossal failure in this country.
but you might be
And
successful in 8 out of the other 10
yeah,
categories.
yeah.
and,
So that
and that's just this
I've
culture. That's this culture.
yeah.
It's highly materialistic. I had to watch out for my cat Bo because his jab is pretty good.
Yeah, so I've experienced that, and a lot of people watching have experienced that. You've experienced that. You've been up. You've made a lot of money. You've had tougher times too. So
Mm-hmm.
when you go through that, then the beauty of that, the upside of that, right? The downside of that is the financial stress and the assault it takes on your identity, feeling like a loser.
Oh
But
my goodness,
the
yes.
upside of it is that we also have to realize it makes us take when we have very little money. It makes us take inventory of other things. It makes us be
Mm-hmm.
grateful for other things. It makes us realize that some things are still priceless. That if we look around, like I realized when I was at my lowest, and money was tight, and I felt like the biggest zero on the planet. And then I would look and I'd be like, well, is the sun still shining? Can I get sunshine? Can I play in the sun and
Yeah.
breathe good air? Yes, I can. Do I have a pen and paper? Can I write down great ideas? Do I still have creative ideas? Yes, I do. Do I still have friends that I can have these great conversations with? Yes. Can I still go and train jujitsu and go hiking? And yes, I can. Can I still eat healthy food? Yes, I can. Are
Mm-hmm.
there still can you still find a great book out there? And yes, and go back in history and get into the minds of some great thinkers. Yes, you can. And can I still have the presence of a woman who has sweetness and who makes you feel like makes you want to be a better man? Yes. And so anyway, you know, the the,
And the
the
love of one of
some
these guys, he doesn't care
yeah,
what's in my. But
exactly.
I'm telling you, he's about to jab me. Your
There you go.
jabs, I'm telling you, Kat, your jabs are good. You can take John Jones. Go. Sorry, Frank. Hey, when this cat wakes up, he lets it not be known. I, you know,
Yeah. So, but I think that at the end of the day, when I look at like the last 11 years, okay, the last 11 years,
mm-hmm.
people, I mean, just to be a little bit personal here, the podcast is not normally about, but I mean, you look at my last 11 years and they're just filled with ups and downs and, and trials and triumphs and tribulations and whatever, whatever word you want, whatever synonym you want to use for adversity, going through the
Mm-hmm.
fires, the storms. I've had a lot of it in my life, and I've certainly had a lot of it in the last 11 years since, in the last 10 years since leaving UFC, Ultimate Fighting Championship, which was a great experience for me. But it's been up and down, and it was up and down financially. And at the end of the day, though, sometimes I'm like, wow, I just feel like the biggest loser. Like, what did I get done? Is that just a lost decade? Like, what happened, right? Like, did I just like run in a circle? Am I just, is that as good as it is as good as it's ever going to get? And my best years have passed me by. And all those things go through your mind, and you introspect and you reflect, and then I honestly do remind myself, like, dude, those were just, as I said here before, I feel like it's a preparation, not a punishment. It's a preparation, not a punishment. I got what I deserved. I got a lot of data. I got a lot of feedback. I got a lot of lessons. I found out exactly who my friends are, who really has my back, like people that are really behind me. A lot of great things have been illuminated. I mean, I'm like, there's been a lot of great stuff, even, with the fitness and nutrition stuff, that I go down those rabbit holes. I spend a lot of time there. I'm like, I've gotten so much smarter with my nutrition IQ, my healthy living IQ. I'm better as a communicator. I've given a couple TEDx speeches. So when I look at it, I'm like, no, dude, like you're still in the game. You're still in the fight. You're still becoming better. You're still growing. It can just feel like, it's kind of like jujitsu when you're a blue belt or something. You feel like you suck or whatever. And it's like, no, you're actually getting better. It's just other people are getting better too. And sometimes you just go through things, or you're battling injuries or whatever. And sometimes you're going to put it together. You just haven't put it together, but you're going to put it together. And
hang on a second. I got to get this cat out of here.
Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah, you got to come out of here.
So I think that.
Sorry about that, Frank.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't realize, I didn't realize that the cat was sleeping in here.
It's okay.
That snuck up on me.
That's okay. I'm sure we got a lot of pet lovers out there. So
yeah,
she's
something.
I think that this is an important thing, and it happens for athletes. It happens for entrepreneurs. You go through the storms, and sometimes you feel like, did I just waste my time? Should I have cut bait earlier? Are my best years behind me? Am I too old? Am I too this? And then you just have to keep a level head, and and at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I really think, like, the best thing you can do, money is important in the society that we've constructed. Okay. Money is important in our particular society at this period of time. It is important, and it can be the source of great stress. But I think I speak for most of us when I say it's not the most important thing. Okay. It's not even, I think for most of us, if we're enlightened, or we're coming from our best place, our purest place in our heart, it's not even top three. I think finances are probably number 4 or number 5. When you say most important things, right? I'd say finances are probably the number 4 or number 5 most important for a lot of us. Now, if your finances are a mess, then that number 4 or number 5 can just corrupt and taint almost every other aspects of your life. It has tentacles that can affect every. So it's a big problem to have when you have it. But I always try to keep sight of the fact that, hey, Frank, you were given certain gifts. Your job is to just be, to be who you are, and then just share whatever gifts you think you have, Noah, share them with as many people as possible. The world needs your gifts. It needs your knowledge. It needs your teachings. It needs your wisdom, even if it's just your daughter, even if it's just your friends, maybe it's your community, maybe it's a larger community. But, and when I think of that, I'm like, you know what? I've made a ripple. I mean, I played a small role in helping to build MMA. I mean, a small role. I'm not Dana White. I'm not Lorenzo. I'm not the fighters. But I was one of the people out there sounding the bell early on when everybody thought we were crazy. And I was writing and interviewing and trying to build the athletes up and writing skits for different things. And I was doing what I could to draw publicity, to draw eyeballs to this sport that I believed in. I played a very tiny role, but I played a role, right? I have many people who've been like, that were like, I want to watch that with you. Tell me what you see, and I want to go train. I want you to teach my kid, whatever. I've made a small little ripple. And so when you just look and you just say, a deep down Noah, through the highs and the lows, is Noah being true to himself? Does Noah feel comfortable in his own skin? Is Noah living an honest life to himself? And if you feel that, I really believe that when we're whole, when you're pure with yourself, when you're whole, when you feel whole, I believe that everything starts to like 10x, 100x. I believe our life starts to come together. My life was a mess in certain respects because I wasn't whole. I wasn't pure. I wasn't as self-honest, and I wasn't as organized. When we get to a strong place spiritually, or when we start to feel more whole, when we're radically honest with ourselves, when we're true to our highest ideals, I believe at warp speed, I believe the finances, everything come together. I believe the finances are just a symptom of some other disrepair that goes on, and some other brokenness, some other lostness. That's a lot of times why we're financially lost or whatever. And when we become more whole, we become more pure, we become more aligned with our higher ideals, I believe the world catches up. I believe people start calling us saying, hey, I want to hire you for this. Can you do this? Can you coach my kid? Can you do this? So now I see a big difference because I'm more whole, I'm more pure, I'm even more radically honest. I'm working harder, and stars start to align. So when you're, this is the one thing I'll say, the final thing on this, and I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. When the last 10 years happened, Noah, and you and I have known each other most of these years, I take full responsibility for everything that went wrong. I don't have a finger to point at other people. I could sit here and say, well, so and so did me wrong, this client did me wrong, and this company did me wrong. I take full responsibility. I'm responsible. I take full control of my life, and everything that needed to happen happened, and I'm the person to fix it. I learned some great lessons, and so I believe it was all for good. So I think the first step is just like an alcoholic, like good, bad, and ugly, whatever is happening to us, take full responsibility. It's just like jujitsu. You get out of it what you put in. If you're not coming every day, you can't be serious about being a world champion. You can't say, I want to be the best. I want to be a world champion. And you're not coming every 6 days a week. You're not serious. You get out of it. You cannot get extraordinary results with average effort. It doesn't work that way. So even for me, whatever's been broken in my life, the results don't lie in our life. Like we say, the mat doesn't lie. The results don't lie. You put the effort in. If you're coming from a pure place, if you're coming from higher ground, if you're coming from a higher spiritual ground, and you know your why, and you know who you are, and you're good to people, the world is going to catch up, and the results, 90-some% chance. Yes, there's bad luck in the world. 90-some% chance that the results come. And if you just keep showing up, the results, if you're just relentless, the results come. They just do. You do the right thing, the right results. We get out of this world exactly what we put out. We get back what we put out. I'm a big believer in that reciprocity, law of compensation, law of the harvest. Big believer in that.
Cool. Well, this has been a great podcast today. So I'm going to ask if we go ahead and wrap it up at this point. So that was a great finish. Let me go ahead and stop it here because I want to talk to you real quick. Okay.
Sure.